Morning, or good afternoon, rather, 12 o'clock, Friday the 24th of April. And here I am broadcasting once again, live, but you can pick up this as a recording if you wish to. And this really will be the fourth part of a sharing on the Genius Programme. We began this early April with the hope and the view and the belief that there may be people out there that could benefit from my discoveries around what makes us as human beings and what makes us perform as better human beings. And part of that is our ability to access our whole intelligence. And I talked about this through parts 1 and 2. So I'll just quickly go back there before we move into what is really a concluding and a closing part of this this insight. So let me remind you that we're all born with our ability to access our full range of intelligence. We're not limited in our ability to access the wholeness of our intelligence. What does happen is that through prolonged institutional schooling and a lot of that institutional behavior carries on into our corporate social worlds, is that we are led into favoring particular types of intelligence, which in a sense limit us to accessing all of our intelligence. And the intelligence that suffer are the creative and emotional intelligences. They're devalued to a large extent by our favoritism towards goal setting and outcomes, goals and results. Doing and having seems to be the preference. And what it's led to is it's led to a lot of really great outcomes. It's led us into great technological developments, but it's also limited our capacity to use the wholeness of who we are. And we become limited because of what I talked about earlier, and that is these habits of thinking. The thinking that causes us to stay within the limited range of thinking that we become accustomed to. So our thinking becomes habitual. We default to that out of familiarity, out of routine. That is what we end up using all the time. And it limits us. It limits our scope. And if you just pause and think about that for the moment, then you will understand why that is the case. So we're limited by our range of thinking. We're governed by habit. But we can change that. And the first way you change anything by is acknowledging that you actually have a problem with something that you have. And in this case, I have a problem with my limited thinking, my habitual thinking. It's only allowing me to see a certain perspective of the world and how I show up in that world. If I acknowledge that I only am limited, that I have a limitation in this respect, I can immediately begin to realize and acknowledge also that I can go beyond that. There's something that allows me to go beyond that. And that's when we spoke to these liberating tools that I began taking you through in part 2 and part 3 last week. I went through that in more detail with you. Okay. So the first part was very much a case of, right, what thinking do I need to become conscious to that is holding me up? And we looked at a number of themes there. We looked at the themes that would govern that in those habitual ways. Voices of judgments, frames, fear, comfort thinking, the story, the narrative of who we are thinking, and then a lot of that other stuff, that commentary type of thinking. So if we do the work around identifying those limiting beliefs, we can then move into that process of freeing ourselves from them. Okay, but if we don't invest in doing the work, we're not going to get an outcome change. Okay, and again, that's part of our default setting, is to think that somehow we can show up as a different person without doing the work that's required of us to be that different person. Okay, that's also a limiting belief. Right? So we then moved into that richer place, that place of, well, how do I change my thinking? How do I move my thinking into a more liberated space? And you'll recall the exercise with the dots, which was about the contextualizing of our thinking, how we often are governed by the content of our thinking and fail to see the context in which our thinking is occurring, and how great problems are often resolved when you stand back and observe the context, not the content. Okay, you look away from the actual fixation of the content, and that allows us to move into those liberating thoughts. Okay, so the liberating thoughts that I began to introduce you to, that I shared with you and went into a little bit of detail. The first of those was what I call observing with presence. And observing with presence is realizing and recognizing that as human beings, we're gifted with incredible senses. Okay? One of those senses, the biggest sense, the sense that provides us with the most information through which we can make decisions, is observing, is sight. Okay, it is the sense of seeing. Okay, is the primary device through which we receive the information that we base all our decisions on. So if we're not deeply attentive and aware of our seeing, our observing, okay, if we're flippant in our observant, if we're light in our observant, if we're superficial in our observing, then we're going to get a superficial and corresponding response back in terms of the input we receive. Makes sense, right? Okay. If, on the other hand, we are more diligent about our observing, if we are attentive to our observing, if we acknowledge and be present to what we're observing, then we get the consequence. We get the benefit of that, right? So observing with presence was that first liberating tool that I talked to you of in detail. The second liberating tool was music, and how we can actually feed our soul with what the energy of music provides us with. Music is energy, okay? And music connects with the energy that we are. Towards the end of last week's part 3's video, I talked about universal law, and I talked about how, as everything, we are everything that is, okay, exists in this particle form, and all that particle form is exactly the same, made of two very small things, okay, energy and consciousness, moving simultaneously, observing each other all the time, always changing, full of energy. So when we receive sound in the form of music, it causes us to change in terms of our energy, okay? It can create that energetic shift in who we are, okay? And we know that. We will be driving along in an otherwise neutral, perhaps, or indifferent emotional state, a sort of calm, okay-ish kind of feeling state. All right, we'll be tuning in maybe to some music, and suddenly, in amongst the wallpaper of music that we've been listening to, up pops a particular piece of music, and bingo, we become something different. We just shift into a newer version of who we were because we're energized by that particular piece of music. And music does that. Okay? We need to use the power of music more often to shift us and energize us and motivate us into being something else. Okay, so be mindful. And what I said to you there as a tool is to find those 10 pieces of music that power you upwards, okay? Be careful that they're not 10 pieces of music or littered in amongst there are memorabilia, okay, rather than energizers, okay? Memorabilia in the sense of that was a piece of music that I felt very attached to when I was in a relationship with so-and-so, okay? Or it marked a point in my story, my history, okay, that was favorable. It was a moment. Be careful that the music doesn't link you to meaning, okay? The music should be used purely to energize you, okay? So you'll experiment and experience that as you go through that. So continuing those liberating toolkit, this is a refresher from where we were last week before I get into the exercises of today. The third point was the power of questions, okay? How enormously valuable questions are. And again, part of that socialized educational model, that industrial educational model that we experienced, questions became less and less important. What we were taught to find were answers, okay, and specifically singular answers. So we gave up a lot of the questioning approaches. What we learn in real world life is that when you use questions and you use questions smartly, you open up other opportunities. So open-ended questions are powerful. And I referred you to the story of Trevor Bayliss, the gentleman that invented the wind-up radio, and how the wind-up radio solved or addressed the pandemic of HIV as it swept through Africa. So go and look at that in some great detail there. The power of questions was the third liberating tool. The fourth liberating tool was what we call play for thinking, okay? So if you want better thinking, you have to change the context of the thinking. So going into the thinking in the typical scenarios that we try and solve critical thinking in a corporate sense, we all come together in our boardrooms. Well, we can't do that at the moment, so what we do is we come together in our virtual boardrooms, but we still behave and perform in the same way. We follow the same habitual thinking. Okay, it starts with the leader of the team presenting the evidence that suggests we need some new thinking. The leader of the team then goes around the room. What are the ideas that we have? The leader of the team suggests that we follow a certain structured process in order to come up with ideas. Okay, we might use a critical thinking tool, or we might use mind maps, or we might use whatever. Okay, but we end up largely getting the same sort of outcomes because we're coming from a habitual thinking place. Okay, so I introduce you to the magic bag. Remember the magic bag in part 3 of the program? That toolkit with all sorts of really weird and different things in it. Okay, it's not the only way to come up with playful thinking. The idea is to create innovative and different ways in which thinking can occur, because when you do that, you get different outcomes. If you stay within the same environment of thinking, you're going to get the same thinking outcomes. Okay, so the key to it is to play, right? And here we go back and we reference children. All right, why do we reference children? Well, they haven't been programmed to the same condition that we have. They're liberated. Okay, watch a bunch of 4-year-olds playing. Watch what they play with. Okay, we give them these prescribed toys, but that bucket and spade that we give them to dig up the sand and put the sand in the bucket and make sand, that bucket becomes something else entirely in their imaginations. Okay, they use that in all sorts of other ways. That spade becomes something other than just a spade in their imaginative and playful fashions. So if you're stuck in terms of liberating the thinking environments that you need to use more and more of, figure out what you should be playing at first. Okay, have some playtime, and out of the playtime will come some good thinking. Okay, then I moved to, and this is where I left you at the end of last week, the fifth liberating tool, which is very, very important, a very broad liberating tool, universal law and intention. And they sit together because they work together. Right? And the first part of that universal law component is very, very key. It's very, very important to understand the science, okay, of what you are, what we are, and how this universe works collectively. Okay, we're not independent. Okay, this idea that you think you might be in some way individual, okay, is an illusion. Everything is connected. Everything is made of the same fundamental particles. Okay, nothing is different. I am no different than the books or the bookshelf or the wall that sits behind me. We're all made of the same stuff. Everything is made of the same stuff. And as we expand outwards, so let me look outside this window here to the tree line and the sky above me and the outer atmosphere of the planet Earth and beyond, into that sky beyond, into that universe beyond there, and beyond the solar system that we know of, all made of the same stuff. Okay, very simple. Okay, this is not hokey pokey. This is science. Trust science. We're having to trust science right now with respect to a virus, a COVID-19 virus. Okay. Finally, we're waking up to the idea that, oh, we can trust science on certain things. Well, trust science on this idea that universal law, okay, and how particles interact with particles is what we're about. Okay. You really get to understand that. Years ago, I watched and it's available on YouTube. You can get this on YouTube, and I thoroughly recommend you go and spend some time and watch this. It was a short little drama documentary. It was called "What the Bleep Do We Know?" Okay, what the bleep do we know? Down the rabbit hole. What the bleep do we know? And it's a fantastic documentary, but it's a little story told through the documentary, which makes it very entertaining and very palatable. It deals with the sciences of universal law, and it explains it in a far better way than I can explain it. So go and have a look at that. It's very, very powerful. There is also a very, very good book. It's up here somewhere. It's by a gentleman called John Kehoe. And John Kehoe wrote Quantum Warrior about 8 or 9 years ago now. Now, Quantum Warrior speaks to the same thing. Okay, the balance between universal law and the power of our thinking. Okay, so universal law and intention. Okay, and how powerful they sit. So those two references are very, very important if you want to really leverage the power that sits inside you in terms of your intention. Okay, what we put our minds to is often what we create. Okay, the Buddhists have this wonderful thing in their understanding, and it goes that wherever you go, or wherever I go, there I am. Okay, so wherever I go, there I am. Wherever you go here, that's where you are. And intention is linked to that as well. So if you're looking for specific outcomes in your life, if you set clear vision around that, if you set clear intention around that, okay, you've got a far higher possibility of getting to it than if you don't. Okay, and the science of that is also very, very clear. Go and have a look at the book by Lynn McTaggart, The Power of Intention, or rather the Intention Experiment. Beg your pardon, Lynn McTaggart. The Intention Experiment. Go and have a look at that. That will inform you as to how intention works, what it's all about, why it is so remarkable. So those were the liberating ideas. So this is the program, right? We're getting to closing the program. I'm going to close the program with the actions that will embed now a positive habit of thinking. Right? So first of all, we need to identify the habit of thinking that is trapping us, limiting us, that narrow belief system that we have. And the only way you're going to do that is by getting down and recording your thinking habit as it currently is. So going through those 6 areas that we'd identified, okay, those fears, those voices of judgments, the comfort, the story, the narrative, the frameworks that you're working with. Go and look at that work, all right? Do that work. Identify what limiting thinking you have. As soon as you do that, your brain does a lot of the work then for you. Your brain realizes that you've identified this as something you don't need any longer, and it goes about the process of dispatching, right? You can also go through a process yourself of freeing yourself, liberating yourself from it by going through a process of, I no longer need you, thank you very much, a ritual of saying goodbye to that thinking. We looked then, part 2, at these liberating tools, which I've wound up on now, as I've gone through this again, those 5 areas of liberating thinking. And if you just stay with those for a moment, and you think how powerful each one of those are, even if you just access one of those every day, you know, it's really going to start changing how you see yourself, how you form in your thinking, and how things are emerging. But part 3 is where, this is where in the classics they say that the rubber hits the road. Part 3 is going to distinguish between those people that are actually genuinely serious about changing who they are versus those people that want to change who they are but are not really prepared to do the work. And there are many people out there like that, unfortunately. Okay, they want the quick, instant solution. They want instant gratification. They believe that there is a quick pill to fixing things. Well, the truth is there isn't a quick pill to anything. Anything in life that has any value requires effort to gain it. And you'll realize that. So part 3 is embedding the positive habits that we've learned. And there are 6 steps here, which I'm going to take you through. I'll take you through each one of them in a way that makes sense to you. Now, each one of these should be embraced on a daily basis. And the neuroscience confirms that you can actually introduce a new habit in a period of 21 days. So if you commit to doing something on a daily basis and you do it consistently for a period of 21 days, then the neuroscience will acknowledge that this is a new pattern, this is a new habit, and it will adopt it. It will become easier and easier to do it. Okay. If you think about learning to ride a bicycle, okay, that took a number of experiences before you got there. And as I say, you know, anything in life that is valuable requires that investment in time. So the first exercise that needs to become a part of your daily routine is journaling. Okay, and you need to journal here on a regular basis, and you need to commit to the idea of just having a little notebook to write down what is going on. Okay, it's a reflection of where you are. The marvelous thing about this is you don't have to write about anything specific. It's the act of writing that is important. It's the act of putting pen to paper consistently. And there's a deep part of neuroscience that actually confirms this as a practice. And that science was conducted at 2 USA-based universities about 3 or 4 years ago now. And they took a university on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. And they ran simultaneously, they ran tests simultaneously on 2 campuses. And they took 3 groups of people, 3 groups of students on each campus. And they said to Group A, we would like you to journal consistently for 6 months. This is the methodology. Group B, we would like you to not journal at all. And group C, we would like you to journal, but you can do that on an electronic device. I did this over 6 months on 2 campuses. The feedback, the results were astonishing. After 6 months, there was a correlationship between the students that had journaled and their academic performance, and it was far higher than both groups B and group C, considerably higher. Okay? And what became evident was that the students that journaled regularly were able to recall detail in far more precise, accurate fashions. They were able to articulate their arguments and propositions in a far more detailed way. They had high levels of focus and concentration. Their recall was better. They were more creative. The list just went on and on and on. The benefits of journaling are astonishing. They are absolutely astonishing. So go and look at the science of journaling. In terms of what do you need to journal about, it's not important. Okay, it really isn't. If you're battling to write about something, write about why you're battling to write about something. If you need structure, you can use this structure. You can say, this is what worked for me today, recorded. This is where I felt challenged today, recorded. And these are the things that I'm holding on to as I go through the day. You can write about what you're grateful for. That's a wonderful way of lifting the positiveness of you. You can also write about your story. You can just write about, this is where I am in this journey. This is what I'm experiencing. What you write about is less important than the process, the practicality of putting pen to paper in a consistent way. And the reason that is important is because when you do that, it causes your prefrontal cortex to engage, okay? And when the prefrontal cortex is engaged consistently over a period of time, it actually grows. You can grow the fiber of the prefrontal cortex. And when you do that, you are able to then expand that higher level of intelligence. And it's the prefrontal cortex that connects all of your intelligences. It's your prefrontal cortex that allows you to engage the wholeness of your thinking. A tiny little piece of your brain sits just there. So journaling on a consistent basis stimulates that. So every day, put it beside your bed or put it in a place where you're going to go to it. Don't not do it, do it. If you slip off for a day, not the end of the world, get back on and carry on, okay? You're going to have to make a decision around your commitment to yourself here. You're going to have to say, am I in this or am I not in this? And if you're not in it, it's okay. You're not in it, right? So don't expect great big changes in your life. If you are in it, stay the course, carry on. The second tool that I want you to consider embedding is your ability to leverage your curiosity once again. Okay, so as children, we were deeply curious. And I made reference to questioning as a liberating tool. Questioning and curiosity directly connected, right? Okay, curiosity is me having that present moment to consider, well, what is going on? What am I experiencing? What is this about? Why am I feeling this? What's going on there? What's going on this? How is that working? How does this work? What if, what if, what if? And we need to be doing far more of that with ourselves and with everything around us. But we've lost our desire for curiosity. So what I say to people is, find something small to begin with, and this is the practice. Okay? Find something small that you can have around you all the time. Okay, and what you're going to do with that is you're going to, first of all, identify it for what it actually is, recognize it for what it actually is. But then each day, and you can use a journal again to do this, each day you're going to open that book up, take out your pen, look at this little object for whatever it is, and you're going to write down what could it be. Okay, so you're going to write down what could it be. So let's step back here. Okay, let me find, just bear with me for a second here as I pick up a little object. Okay, so what I've got here is I've got a string of beads, okay, right? So here's an object, great little object, all right? So it's a whole lot of beads, okay? It was gifted to me at a Buddhist retreat, okay? It's actually for meditating, right? So you just quietly count these little beads individually. Some people know this as a rosary as well, okay? So I look at this, right, and I have this around me, and I know what it is. I've just told you what it is, okay? It's a prayer string. It's a Buddhist prayer string. It's made up of little bits of little beads, little individual beads held on a string, right? So that's what we know it as. So the exercise of curiosity every day is to ask, well, what could this be? Right? What could this be? Right? It could be a necklace, right? It could be lots of little faces. It could be a ladder. It could be a counting instrument. Well, it is a counting instrument. There are lots of things it could be. And when we spend time and invest time in considering, well, what could it be? Okay, it could be lots of, look at these little beads, look at these little beads in detail. They're marvelous, eh? Each one could be a little universe, couldn't it? It could be a little world on its own, right? Each one could be a little person, little face, okay? So it's when we spend time exploring in a curious way what something is and what it could be that we start to really empower, again, those neural pathways that open up our questions, right? So in your journal, every day, pull out your object and write down not what it is, but what it could be. And just keep building on that every day for 20 days, 21 days. Right, the third tool, okay, is courage. And, you know, we look at courage and we think, well, what is courage? Okay. Well, it's this wide, you know, broad spectrum of different things. If you're keen and if you really want to change the version of who you are, and you use the tools in the Genius program to do that, it's going to require courage for you to do that. You're going to have to deeply dig into some aspect of who you are, which is a courageous act. You're going to have to really work at finding out, well, who are you and what is going on here? And when we do that, and if we do that successfully, then we tap into that courage. We acknowledge that we are courageous and we can really work on that. So every day, write down what act of courage have you performed today? And that's not about running out and saving other people, so much as it is about recognizing the courage within you. So one of the most courageous things a human being can do is to put their hand up and say, I don't know this. Okay. I don't know this. Can somebody help me? Right? That is an act of courage. Right? So reaching out and accessing our courage is very, very important. What will also help is to think back of those many different things that you have wanted to do over your lifetime. Okay, those things that you said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this. Look at those, go back to those things that you'd listed and say to yourself, right, okay, what stopped me from doing that? Why can't I do that now? And start addressing that. Pick one of those things, figure out what the plan is, and start working towards achieving that. And that will take courage, okay? So record your act of courage each day. Today, this is what I did that put me in a courageous place. I reached out because I didn't know, okay, this aspect of working online. So I called a colleague of mine to advise me as to the best way to do this, okay? I was courageous because I shared a deep feeling with another colleague about how I was troubled and worried about where I was going presently. Okay, these are acts of courage. Okay? So see how on a daily basis you can access your courage, okay, in order to move you through what it is you need to do. Okay. Then let's look at the fourth one, which is freedom. Okay. Now, again, a bit like courage, freedom's huge, it's colossal. And on a daily basis for 21 days, you need to consider how you're going to be free. Okay. And how you're going to be free is really based around so much on what are you willing to let go of. Okay. Bob Dylan summed that up beautifully when he said freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. Freedom comes not when we acquire something. Freedom comes when we let go of things. We are free. Okay. That's when freedom really emerges. So for 21 days, start going through the process of freeing yourself, okay, from a lot of the stuff that have been holding you up. Okay, and that stuff comes in various packages, but there is mental stuff. Okay, so a lot of the fixed beliefs, a lot of those fixed habits, a lot of those fixed attached mental problems. Okay, there's attached mental things. There's the physical freedom. Free yourself from a lot of the physical stuff that you're attaching yourself to. Free yourself from perhaps some of the spiritual stuff that you've attached yourself to. Okay. Learn to free yourself from the mental, physical, and spiritual attachments that are holding you up. Okay. And you can do this by just each day recognizing, right, today I'm going to let go of this, and have that ritual to let go of it. So each day, what are you freeing yourself from? Okay. I'm freeing myself from the resentment I had towards whoever. Okay. I'm actually doing that. And that therein as well is an act of courage, right? So these things sit and work together. Each day, for 21 days, write down the things you are freeing yourself from and act on that freedom. Okay. 4 is both mindfulness and meditation. So these are, again, now understood by neuroscience to be hugely significant towards levels of happiness, levels of contentment, levels of success, levels of achievement. People that are present, mindful to their feelings, to what they are sensing. Okay, people that live in the present rather than those who dwell in the past or live in some future state, far more effective. They're far more, they're more positive. They're more likely to get things done. They've got higher outputs. The science is very, very clear on this. Linked to mindfulness, of course, is meditation, any acts of meditation. Anywhere that you can actually then just disengage and allow the mind to be centrally focused around a specific thought, a specific technique, that deliberateness of being in a meditative state. Now, today, because meditation has become so popular and so sought after, there are many, many wonderful apps available across the app network, across the app world, that will guide you. They're guided apps that will help you get into the practice of meditation. I began meditating now, must be about 15 years ago, maybe even longer. And I acquired a technique called transcendental meditation, TM meditation. Some of you may know about that. And there's no particular right or wrong way to meditate. Okay, but there are a lot of misconceptions around meditation. There are a lot of mistruths about meditation, a lot of fabrication about it. It's not emptying your mind. It's not some deeply alone spiritual thing that you have to sit in an uncomfortable position to acquire, or you have to be of a particular religious belief to acquire. Meditation is a very normal and natural condition, but it is a state where we are asking our mind to be focused, and not a state where our mind is just drifting around in its imaginative, wandering, natural fashion. Okay? So TM as a technique, what TM does is TM provides you with a sound mantra. Okay? And that sound mantra is something you say quietly to yourself. And again, look where I'm saying this, right? Quietly to yourself. You say that, you close your eyes, you find a comfortable, quiet place, you set yourself a period of time, and you just, in your mind, to yourself, you just say that sound over and over again, quietly, gently, rhythmically to yourself. And you allow the mind to focus just on that particular sound mantra. And that is transcendental meditation. But as I say, there are many different forms of meditation. If you want to change the version of who you are, you have to engage in meditation, and it has to be a daily practice. If you're not certain about this, there's so many different apps, go and study it, but acquire a technique. As with any techniques, start slowly, right? Start in a gradual, progressive way. Okay, begin by doing so many minutes a day. Keep that as a routine, do it at the same time each day. Okay, make it consistent, make it a part of who you are. Okay, build it. Okay. Mindfulness we can practice at any moment, at any time of the day. Okay, we really can. I often share a technique of mindfulness when I'm working with groups of people, and I tell them about going downstairs to make a cup of rooibos tea. Yeah, I'm on the first floor here in this office. So when I talk about it, I literally go downstairs. Yeah, I take them on a journey of mindfulness. So let me take you on that journey of mindfulness. I go downstairs to make myself a cup of tea, cup of rooibos tea. So I've got an option. What I can really do is just grab the kettle, fill it with water, okay, top it up, put it on the little plate, switch it on, okay, grab a cup, shove a tea bag in the cup, and then pick up my my device as I just scroll through in a mindless kind of fashion. Okay. Alternatively, right, and here is the mindfulness practice being engaged, what I can do is I can go down to the kitchen, I can pick up the kettle, and I can fill it with water. And as I'm filling it with water, I can observe the water, I can look at the detail of the water, I can smell the water, okay, because water has a smell. It's also got a lightness, a coloration about it, which is intense. Look at it, how it sparkles in the light, okay? And it's life, water is life, okay? Acknowledge that, see that water going into the kettle. Put the kettle on the plate, switch on the kettle, see that little red light that goes on, bing, that now tells me electricity is surging through the water. Electricity is engaging with the particles that water is, and it's causing it to get excited. It's enlivening it, and there's a process of heat taking place. As I reach for the upper cupboard and pull out a cup, porcelain cup, made of clay from the earth. Okay, somebody's made this cup. It's been built in a beautiful fashion. It's hard, it's watertight, but it's light. And it's actually a remarkable piece of work as I put it on the table alongside the kettle that is now getting really excited. As I reach up into the cupboard again and pull out a tin of rooibos tea, okay, open the lid, and there's that distinct smell of that rooibos tea, red bush tea, okay, and it comes in these amazing little packets where the leaves from the bush have been harvested by hand often and manufactured into these little particles. A distinct particular smell, okay, and I put that rooibos bag into the cup, okay, and the kettle now is getting super excited because I can hear the energy pumping through that water. As I reach across to a cutting board in front of me. On it is a bright yellow lemon and a sharp knife, and I cut into that lemon, and the skin, the lemon essence pours out of that lemon. Okay, the color of it, the luminescence of those lemon slices, okay, the smell of the lemon. And I put the lemon now into the cup as well. The water is now boiled. Pour the water in, okay, and stir that mixture together. And there's that aroma, that incredible aroma of a cup of rooibos tea and lemon. Okay, and that, okay, is a process of mindfulness where I'm engaged with all my senses in a present moment. Okay. And throughout the course of our day, we have many moments where we can be mindful. And mindfulness and meditation are linked. When we are mindful, okay, and we exercise our ability to be present with what we are thinking and feeling, it strengthens the fibers of the prefrontal cortex. Okay. And that becomes critical to how we show up as human beings. So for the next 21 days, write down your experiences of mindfulness and meditate regularly. Then finally, listening. Okay, it's the final tool that I want to share with you about, okay, and talk about it. Listening we're not very good at. Okay, human beings are so busy in their own minds, so focused on their own interests and what's important to them, that we become appalling at listening to one another. Okay. We typically want to spend time, okay, when we're with other people, emphasizing what is important to us rather than investing in the time, okay, and the attention to listen to what they have to say. Okay. So listening becomes a very, very important tool in the process of how you're going to go forward. And the best way to experience that is by being silent. Okay. So here's a challenge. It's an interesting challenge, given that we're in a lockdown scenario. Okay. We're about to come out of a lockdown scenario. We don't quite know. But as a listening exercise, what really strengthens your listening things, two things. One, there's a wonderful book by a woman called Nancy Klein. She wrote a book called Time to Think. It's up here somewhere. Okay. Go and get that. In Time to Think, Nancy Klein talks about setting an environment of thinking. And pivotal to environment of thinking is the ability to pay attention to each other. Okay? And that's about suspending your mouth sufficiently long enough to pay observing attention to what other people have to offer up and going through the discipline of that. Okay? Learning to truly listen is a discipline. It requires a lot of effort. So one of the magic ways of achieving this is by being silent, okay, and working at your silence. So choose time of the day where you elect to be silent. And day one, do it for an hour. Same day, 1 hour. So if you're going to start tomorrow, Saturday, okay, choose an hour tomorrow where you're just going to be absolutely silent. With people around you, just let them know in advance you're not going to be talking during this time. You can have a pen and paper ready if they've got any questions or answers of you. You can just write things down. You can still use your communication skills. You're just not going to use your mouth. Okay. Sunday, make it 2 hours consecutively. Okay. Monday, 3 hours consecutively. And so build on it. Build on your capacity to extend your ability to be silent. Teach your mouth not to operate, and then discover the power of what you will learn coming in with. So that is my timer, and that's a perfect time to say to you, I hope these little videos that I've shared with you over the past 4 weeks have helped you in some way, have guided you in some way, If you've any questions about this, you know how to get a hold of me. You can just reach out and email me on graham@grahamwoodshop.com. And I wish you well on this journey. If you've any questions regarding the book, do the same. You can just email me. Anything at all, please do that. So good luck with your journey. Okay, I wish you all the best. For the time being, be safe.